Thank you for joining your desert frontiersman Alan for more Southwest lost gold and treasure tales. Please leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe. For further desert tales, hit the notification bell. If you would like to help support my time and channel, hit the super thanks heart icon at the bottom of the video and contribute. This is very helpful. Relax and enjoy. In the annals of Western American history, few tales capture the imagination quite like the story of the lost cement mine. This is not merely another campfire legend of the gold rush era. This is a tale documented by none other than Mark Twain in his seminal work, Roughing It, chronicled in W. H. Alliant's Gold, Guns, and Ghost Towns, and substantiated by numerous historical records. Yet despite its well-documented history, the mine remains lost to this day, its golden treasure still hidden somewhere in the shadow of California's Mammoth Mountain. The year was 1857, and the trails to California's gold fields had begun to take shape through the wilderness. The promise of untold riches drew countless settlers westward, but the journey remained treacherous. The Native American tribes who called these lands home continued to resist the endless stream of settlers crossing their territories, and violence was a constant companion on the trail west. Just days after the tragic Mountain Meadows massacre, where 140 settlers lost their lives, another group of pioneers found themselves in the crosshairs of history. As they followed the old Spanish trail near what would later become the California-Nevada border, a band of Paiute warriors descended upon them. In the chaos that followed, two men managed to slip away into the darkness, beginning a journey that would birth one of the West's most enduring mysteries. These nameless survivors, their identities lost to time, found themselves navigating a precarious path through unknown territory. Moving under cover of darkness and hiding during daylight hours, they pushed northward through a vast desert valley. To their west loomed the imposing Sierra Nevada mountains, their snow-capped peaks a constant reminder of the barriers between them and safety. When their water supplies finally ran dry, desperation forced them westward toward those forbidding peaks. Fortune, it seems, sometimes favors the desperate. The men stumbled upon the headwaters of the Owens River, finding not just life-saving water but something that would spark decades of treasure hunting and speculation. While resting in a small valley within sight of a towering gray mountain, one of the survivors made an observation that would prove fateful. He noticed a peculiar, cement-like ledge, its surface spotted with yellow flakes that caught the sunlight. One man saw a worthless rock, the other recognized the telltale sign of gold. The believer, whose name has been lost to history, gathered approximately 10 pounds of the ore, stuffing his pockets with what he believed to be a fortune. The two men eventually found their way across the mountains to the San Joaquin River, following its course to the settlement of Millerton. But fate, as it so often does in tales of lost mines, had other plans. The man carrying the gold-flecked ore fell gravely ill, forcing him to seek medical treatment in San Francisco. His condition deteriorated rapidly, and as medical bills mounted, he found himself indebted to his physician, a Dr. Randall. With no other means to settle his debt, the dying man made a decision that would spawn countless expeditions and searches. He paid Dr. Randall with the remaining ore and provided him with something even more valuable, a map to the gold-bearing ledge. Soon after, he passed away, taking many of the location's secrets with him to the grave. 4 years passed before Dr. Randall acted on the information he had received. In the spring of 1861, he arrived at the settlement of Monoville, determined to locate the mysterious gold deposit. He secured a quarter section of land a few miles north of town on what was known as Pumice Flats, with the distinctive Mono craters rising nearby. Randall assembled a team of 11 men under the leadership of a foreman named Gid Whiteman, and the systematic search began. But the true discovery would come from an unexpected quarter. In 1862, Two members of Randall's search party, a man named Van Horn and a German whose name has been lost to history, made a crucial breakthrough. The German prospector had located the gold-bearing ledge, though not on Randall's property. He shared his discovery with Van Horn, and the two men crafted a plan to exploit their find in secret. They departed the search party under the pretense of seeking new opportunities, taking a single horse to carry their belongings. Once out of sight, they made their way to the discovered ledge, filled sacks with the precious ore, and headed for Virginia City. At the Walker River, they tested their find, extracting thousands of dollars worth of gold from the cement-like material. Buoyed by their success, they purchased supplies and additional horses in Virginia City, brought a third partner into their confidence, and returned to establish a permanent camp. However, their dreams of wealth were about to collide with the harsh realities of frontier life. Chief Joaquin Jim and his warriors descended upon their camp, stripping them of everything except the clothes on their backs and a single horse, a clear warning to abandon their enterprise. The three men retreated to Virginia City, planning to return when the Indian trouble subsided. But once again, illness intervened. Van Horn became seriously ill, and believing death was near, shared the location's secret with a fellow passenger named Carpenter while traveling by riverboat to San Francisco. The knowledge passed from Carpenter to two new seekers, Kirkpatrick and Colt, the latter a member of the famous firearms manufacturing family. Their search led them to Mammoth Canyon, where they found evidence of the camp, log foundations, freshly cut tree stumps, and a grim discovery, two skeletons believed to be the remains of Van Horn's partners. Chief Joaquin Jim's warning, it seemed, had carried deadly weight. But perhaps the most tantalizing chapter in this tale of lost treasure began in 1869, when two men named Kent and McDougal entered the story. For 8 consecutive summers, they made mysterious journeys to the Mammoth Mountain area. Their pattern was consistent. They would outfit themselves in Stockton, California, hire an Indian guide to lead them across the mountains, dismiss him upon reaching their destination, and then vanish into the wilderness. The truth of their activities remained hidden until 1877, when a man collapsed on a San Francisco street. As he lay dying in a hospital bed, he identified himself as McDougal and shared an extraordinary tale. According to his account, Kent had approached him in Arizona, claiming knowledge of a lost treasure in California. Kent hired McDougal with a generous annual guarantee of $1,500, a considerable sum for the time. Their first successful expedition occurred after dismissing their Indian guide. Kent revealed that he had discovered the location in 1861 during Dr. Randall's initial search, but Indian conflicts had prevented his return. Following Kent's memorized landmarks, they located the legendary ledge and extracted a fortune in gold. For 8 summers, Kent and McDougal worked their secret mine, taking out between $25,000 and $50,000 each season, their total haul approaching $400,000 in 1870s currency. They melted the gold into bars and carefully concealed them among their supplies for transport. Their precautions were elaborate. They never filed official claims, meticulously concealed the location after each season's work, and always approached from the western side of the mountains to avoid the watchful eyes of the desert mining camps. McDougal's deathbed confession was the last reliable account of the mine's location. Kent never returned and vanished from historical record, possibly succumbing to illness or death before he could retrieve his fortune. The team's methods of concealment proved remarkably effective. The site has never been rediscovered. Yet evidence of the mine's existence extends beyond these direct accounts. Traders in the region reported numerous instances of local Native Americans paying for goods with gold, though they never revealed its source. One trader received a payment of $300 in gold, a substantial sum that sparked his curiosity but led nowhere. The nearby settlement of Benton, a day's journey into the desert from the supposed location, regularly saw Native Americans trading with gold, but its origin remained a mystery. The passage of time has only deepened the mystery. Wind, sand, and storms have reshaped the landscape, potentially hiding or revealing new clues to the mine's location. The cement-like ledge with its golden treasure remains hidden somewhere in the vast wilderness, waiting for another fortunate discoverer to stumble upon its riches. The story of the lost cement mine stands apart from other lost mine tales of the American West. Its documentation in contemporary sources, multiple credible witnesses, and the concrete evidence of gold emerging from the region all suggest that somewhere in the shadow of Mammoth Mountain, a fortune still lies waiting. The question remains, will the forces of nature that helped conceal this treasure one day reveal it again? The rugged peaks of the Sierra Nevada keep their secrets well, but as any prospector will tell you, no treasure remains hidden forever. Perhaps somewhere in those mountains, beneath years of weathering and geological change, the reddish, cement-like ledge still holds its golden fortune, waiting for the right person to rediscover its location and unlock its secrets once again. Welcome to Southwest Desert, where we uncover America's Southwest greatest untold treasures. Today, we're taking you on a journey through time to the rugged Nevada territory of the late 1800s, where $60,000 in gold bullion, worth well over $1 million in today's money, lies buried somewhere beneath the desert sands, waiting to be discovered. The year was somewhere between 1870 and 1893, during the heyday of the American West. Nevada was still young, having achieved statehood just a few years earlier, and the discovery of the Comstock lode had transformed Virginia City from a dusty mining camp into one of the richest cities in the world. This was a time when fortunes were made and lost overnight, when the line between lawman and outlaw often blurred, and when stagecoach robberies were considered by many to be a perfectly acceptable occupation. The road between Virginia City and Carson City told the story of the West itself. Deeply rutted from countless wagon wheels, it wound its way through the sage-covered desert, every pothole and rock a testament to the countless traders, miners, and dreamers who'd passed that way. It would become the setting for one of Nevada's most enduring mysteries. Wells Fargo controlled all express business in the territory with what many considered an iron fist. Their rates were so high that local miners often joked that the company's business practices were nothing short of highway robbery themselves. As one old-timer put it, when bandits rob Wells Fargo, it's just thieves stealing from thieves. This sentiment would play a crucial role in how events unfolded. Picture, if you will, a Wells Fargo stagecoach making its way along this treacherous route. Behind the reins sat a skilled driver, his hand steady as he guided 6 powerful horses through the rough terrain. Beside him, a guard sat vigilant, his rifle across his knees, eyes scanning the endless sagebrush for any sign of trouble. Between them sat a strongbox that would be worth millions today. Over 300 pounds of raw gold bullion, destined for the United States Mint branch in Carson City. The journey had been uneventful as they crossed the Carson River, leaving the settlement of Empire City in their dust. Off to the west, Carson City's promises of entertainment beckoned. The guard, his long vigil wearing on him, began to relax. That moment of distraction was all it took. 4 armed men materialized from behind the tall sagebrush like ghosts, bringing the stage to a violent halt. Their attack was choreographed with military precision. One man seized the bridles of the lead team, another held the Wells Fargo men at gunpoint, while 2 others wrestled the heavy strongbox from its perch. Within minutes, the stage was sent on its way, its crew shaken but unharmed. When news of the robbery reached Carson City, it spread through the streets like wildfire. A crowd gathered quickly, their excited voices filling the air as a posse was assembled. These weren't just any lawmen. These were hardened frontiersmen who knew every inch of the desert terrain. The posse thundered across the desert, following tracks that were clear as day in the alkaline dust. The bandits, slowed by their heavy prize, had left a trail that even a greenhorn could follow. But these outlaws weren't planning to outrun their pursuers. They had something else in mind. When the posse caught up with the robbers, what followed was the kind of gun battle that would later become the stuff of dime novels. Bullets whistled through the sagebrush as the desperados made their last stand. When the smoke cleared, 3 of the bandits lay dead under the merciless Nevada sun. Only one survived, a Mexican whose name has been lost to the dusty pages of history. But the gold? It had vanished into thin air. Somewhere between the robbery and the shootout, the bandits had buried their prize, planning to return once the heat died down. It was a common practice among outlaws of the day: bury the loot, wait for the posse to lose interest, then return at leisure to collect your fortune. The surviving bandit was brought back to Carson City in chains, where justice was swift in those days. The trial was quick, and he was sentenced to 20 years in Nevada State Prison. Now, here's where our story takes an incredible turn that seems almost too perfect to be true. The Nevada State Prison at Carson City sat on a rise overlooking the desert, and from his cell window, our mysterious Mexican bandit could actually see the spot where he and his partners had buried the Wells Fargo strongbox. Imagine that torment, day after day, year after year, watching as your fortune lay just out of reach, separated from you by iron bars and armed guards. The prison records of those days were simple affairs, written entirely by hand. They listed only the basics: name, crime, possessions at arrest, and identifying marks. One entry from 1885 mentions a Mexican convicted of robbery in Ormsby County, but the details are too sparse to definitively link it to our story. For 8 long years, a parade of Wells Fargo representatives visited the prison, each trying their own method to convince the prisoner to reveal the gold's location. They tried threats. They tried bribes. They offered deals. The prison officials had their own ways of persuasion. But nothing worked. The old bandit kept his secret locked away as securely as the prison kept him. Then fate intervened. After 8 years of imprisonment, the Mexican contracted tuberculosis, a virtual death sentence in those days. Wells Fargo saw an opportunity. They convinced the governor to grant the dying man a full pardon, reasoning that once free, he might inadvertently lead them to the treasure. They assigned detectives to watch his every move from a distance. But if they were expecting him to make a beeline for the buried gold, they were sorely disappointed. Instead, the ex-convict became a pitiful sight on the streets of Carson City, wasting away from his illness, barely able to walk. That might have been the end of his story if not for the kindness of a local Dutch butcher. This butcher, whose name has also been lost to time, offered the old man a job cleaning his shop and a room in his own home. With regular meals and a warm bed, the former bandit's health improved somewhat. More importantly, he began to form a bond with the butcher and his son. As the months passed, the old Mexican's reserve began to crack. He would regale his benefactors with wild tales of his outlaw days, describing in detail the preparations for various robberies, including the one that led to his capture. One evening, caught up in the sound of his own voice, he nearly revealed his precious secret. He told them how he could see the burial spot from his old prison cell window. The butcher and his son were fascinated. Here they were, sharing their home with a man who knew the location of a fortune. They began to press him gently, offering various inducements to share his secret. Finally, after much persuasion, the old man agreed to lead them to the treasure. Dawn broke on the appointed day. 3 horses stood saddled in the early morning light, steam rising from their nostrils in the cool air. The butcher and his son waited, their hearts racing with anticipation. The old Mexican emerged from the house, walked slowly to his horse, and put one foot in the stirrup. Then, in a twist of fate that seems almost too cruel to be true, he suffered a massive hemorrhage and collapsed. The secret of the Wells Fargo gold died with him there in the dust, within sight of the prison where he'd spent 8 years guarding it. The search area lies between the Carson River and a low, swampy spot near the state prison, covering roughly 1 square mile. It's a harsh landscape, where the forces of nature seem to conspire to keep the gold hidden. The rocks in this location have high iron content, making metal detectors unreliable. The fierce winds of spring and autumn continuously reshape the landscape, alternately burying and exposing the secrets beneath. The butcher and his son spent years searching for the gold, their dreams of wealth driving them to examine every depression in the ground, every unusual mound of earth. One of the prison guards devoted every off-duty moment to the search, convinced that his familiarity with the view from the prison windows would give him an advantage. All failed. Modern treasure hunters have brought sophisticated equipment to the search: metal detectors, ground-penetrating radar, even divining rods. But the gold remains hidden. The winds continue their endless dance around Carson City, and somewhere out there, in a shallow hole dug by desperate men, lies 300 pounds of gold bullion. Some believe the treasure hunters have walked right over it countless times, never knowing how close they were to one of Nevada's greatest lost treasures. Others think the spring floods or shifting sands have buried it too deep to find. But perhaps someday, after a particularly strong windstorm reveals what the desert has kept hidden for over a century, a lucky wanderer will spot something glinting in the Nevada sun, the last trace of a desperate heist that's fascinated treasure hunters for generations. Welcome to Southwest Desert, where today we're diving into one of the most intriguing lost mine stories from California's unforgiving desert, the legend of the lost mule, Shoe Gold. Picture yourself in California's harsh desert landscape, where the chocolate mountains rise like ancient sentinels from the earth. The year is sometime between 1892 and 1916, during the heyday of the American Girl and Hedges mines in the nearby Cargo Muchacho Mountains. These were boom times for gold mining in the region. The American Girl mine operated steadily from 1892 to 1900, and again from 1913 to 1916, while the Hedges mine, later known as Tumco, saw continuous operation from 1892 to 1909, with intermittent activity until 1916. It was during this golden age that a lone prospector was about to stumble upon what could be one of the richest gold discoveries in the American West. But like many tales of lost mines, this one begins with desperation and ends in mystery. Our story takes place in the treacherous terrain surrounding Picacho Peak, about 25 miles north of Yuma, where the Colorado River winds its way through the desert. This isn't your typical desert landscape. It's a maze of volcanic flows, rock-paved mesas, and massive washes that could confuse even the most experienced desert rat. And into this deadly puzzle of nature rode our mysterious prospector, a man whose name has been lost to time. Now, here's where things get interesting. This wasn't just any prospector's journey. Our man was violently ill with dysentery when he was ferried across from Arizona to Picacho. Despite his condition, he was determined to make it to an oasis called Dos Palmas, nearly 90 airline miles away. 4.5 hours into his journey, weakness overtook him. According to Carl Walker of Gold Rock Ranch, who would later become intimately familiar with this story, a sick man traveling by horse and leading a pack mule could have covered no more than 16 miles in that time. Our prospector found himself at a saddle between two hills. Whether they were high or low would later become a point of contention in our tale. As he lay there, struggling to recover, fate decided to play her hand. There, jutting from the earth, was a ledge of rock so rich with gold that it would barely crumble when struck. This wasn't just any gold deposit. This was the stuff of prospectors' dreams. The ore was richer than anything he had ever seen before, with golden streakings clearly visible in the rock. And scattered below the ledge, placer gold, eroded from the mother lode above, glinting dully in the desert sun. But our prospector was too weak even to build a stone discovery monument. In a moment of desperate ingenuity, he did something that would give this lost mine its name. He took off his vest, folded it carefully, and placed it on the ledge. To keep it from blowing away in the desert wind, he weighted it down with a spare mule shoe from his pack animal. It was a makeshift marker, he hoped, that would guide him back to his fortune. Taking a few samples from the ledge and one last look at the terrain to fix it in his mind, he mounted his horse and continued his journey. But fortune had other plans. The prospector made it to the coast, but his illness worsened. He ended up in the Veterans Hospital at Sawtell, where he would spend his final days. But before he passed, he shared his secret with a man named William M. Smith. Now, Smith's exact relationship to our prospector is shrouded in mystery. Some say he was a brother-in-law, others a son-in-law, and some claim there was no relation at all. What we do know is that Smith visited the dying man in the hospital for 2 years, and eventually the prospector gave him something precious, a map showing the route he'd taken that fateful day. "I'll never get back now," the old prospector told Smith. "If you find it, send me just enough to make me comfortable." With those words, our original discoverer fades from history, not even his name remembered by those who would later tell his tale. But this is where our story truly begins to get interesting. William Smith was so convinced of the mine's existence that, in 1927, he bought property at the old Hogue Ferry Landing, at the mouth of Gavilan Wash, about 7 miles above Picacho. He named it the 4S Ranch, and it would become his base of operations for what would turn into a more than 20-year search for the lost gold. Let's paint a picture of this remarkable landscape. Above the old gold camp lies mile after mile of desert mountain wilderness. The area is cut by numerous major washes: White Wash, Bear Gulch, Carrizo, Gavilan, and Julian Para washes, among others. Each of these has yielded placer gold, making the search even more tantalizing and confusing. In those days, there were several possible routes our sick prospector might have taken. There was the river road from Picacho that crossed the mouths of all these washes. There was Hoga's road up Gavilan Wash to Indian Mesa, along which he once trail-herded hogs from his Arizona ranch. And there was the road Julian Para had roughed out from an upper tributary of the Wash that bears his name to Mesquite Diggings, which he had discovered. Adding to the complexity were the numerous deep-rutted Indian trails leading to watering places and through the easy passes, still used by Indians and Mexican and American miners. Today, most of these routes are gone. The river road lies submerged by backed-up waters of Imperial Dam, and Para's mining road has almost vanished. The Indian trails are broken and weathered and unused. Smith's search became something of a legend in itself. He explored every possible route the sick prospector might have taken, his search area growing wider with each passing year. By 1932, he was focusing on the area between his 4S Ranch and Midway Well, especially in the area where Para Wash heads, east of Imperial Gables. Ed Rochester, who had prospected all of the Picacho country, first heard of the lost mule shoe gold from Smith around 1932. When they discussed it, Smith was concentrating his hunt between the 4S Ranch and Midway Well. Rochester believed that Carrizo, Gavilan, and Para washes were all possible locations for the lost ledge, with Para being the most likely. By 1937, Smith had shifted his attention to the main northern tributary of Para Wash, near the Great Sonovia Natural Water Tank. This area held particular promise. According to Clyde Stewart of Picacho, every wash that comes into Para from the north side will pan gold, but Sonovia has the most. The old main Indian trail passed right by Sonovia tanks, which never go dry. Julian Para Wash, which the old-timers invariably called Houlihan, has three chief tributaries: the left with Mona Tank, the center with Willow Spring, and the right with Sonovia tanks. Julian Para himself had been placering gold near Sonovia tanks 65 years before our story takes place. But some, like Carl Walker, suggest a different possibility altogether. Given that the prospector's destination was specifically Dos Palmas, could he have kept south of the Chocolate Mountains the entire way? He might have traveled on a northwest line, past Midway Well and on until he struck the Old Bradshaw or Chuckawalla Trail, then followed it past Canyon Springs to Dos Palmas. Smith's final known search came in the winter of 1949. He stopped at Gold Rock Ranch, where he spent the night talking with the Walkers. That evening, he was more confident than ever. "I know exactly where it is," he insisted. "I'm going right up there and find it tomorrow." He even urged Carl Walker to come with him, promising to fill that box with gold for you, pointing to the old trunk the Walkers used as a wood box. But the desert had other plans. The next morning, Smith's car got stuck in the sand of a wash not far from the ranch. He spent the entire day waiting to be rescued. As he prepared to return to the coast, he assured the Walkers grimly, "I'll be back." But he never did return, and no one reported hearing from him again. The lost mule shoe gold remains one of those tantalizingly possible lost mine stories. The details are specific enough to be believable, yet vague enough to maintain its mystery. Somewhere out there, between two hills, high or low, there might still be a ledge of gold-rich rock. Perhaps the old vest and mule shoe have long since weathered away, but the gold, if it exists, remains, waiting for someone who knows both what they're looking for and how to survive while looking. As Carl Walker once said, "It's anybody's story now, and anybody's gold." But as our tale reminds us, the desert knows how to guard its secrets. This harsh land has claimed lives before, and will claim them again if given the chance. Perhaps that's the real lesson of the lost mule shoe gold, that sometimes the true value lies not in finding the treasure, but in the wisdom gained from searching for it. This has been Southwest Desert. Join us next time for another story from the wild Southwest frontier. Welcome to Southwest Desert, where we uncover the stories that shape the American Southwest. I'm your host, Alan, and today we're diving into one of Arizona's most enduring legends, the Lost Dutchman Mine. But this isn't just another retelling. We've uncovered a fascinating first-hand account that might just change everything you thought you knew about this legendary gold mine. Picture yourself driving east from Phoenix on Highway 60, where the Superstition Mountains rise abruptly from a wide, sparsely vegetated desert mesa. These aren't just any mountains. They're the keepers of one of the Southwest's most tantalizing secrets, Jacob Walzer's lost gold mine. As you approach, low clouds hang like a shroud over the summits, while giant saguaros dominate the landscape, sharing ground with mesquite, prickly pear, and cola. The winding Queen Creek's swift waters rush downward from their source in the Pinal Mountains, and 5 miles west of Superior, an unpaved country road leads to our story's heart. 10 miles down this dusty path sits a small house, almost hidden by dense undergrowth of cactus, cat's claw, mesquite, and palo verde. This is where we find our key witness to history in the 1950s, Herman Petrasch. Step inside Herman's modest home, built in 1934 from hand-hewn local timber and salvaged materials. The walls are lined with shelves of souvenir magazines and weather-yellowed books. A low, wood-burning cook stove occupies one corner, surrounded by well-scrubbed pots and pans. The single room contains just the essentials: a sturdy canvas-covered bed, a coal oil lamp, clothes hanging from wall nails, and a simple table serving as both desk and dining board. Two straight chairs and a pair of rockers complete the scene, with one chair supporting two double-barreled shotguns, their muzzles protected by tin cans. Herman's story takes us back to 1892 when he first arrived in Arizona. His brother, Reinhard Petrasch, had written to him about an incredible opportunity. You see, Reinhard had been working at Jacob Walzer's bakery in Phoenix, and over the years the two men had become close friends. But this wasn't just about baking bread. It was about gold. Just months earlier, in the spring of 1891, tragedy struck. The Salt River flooded, nearly destroying Walzer's adobe home in South Phoenix. Picture an 82-year-old man clinging to a fruit tree as the waters rage around him. Though he survived, the ordeal left him partially paralyzed from exposure and shock. 6 months later, on October 8, 1891, Jacob Walzer took his last breath, but not before sharing his secret with Reinhardt and his housekeeper, Julia Thomas. Now here's where our story differs from the countless legends you might have heard. First, let's clear up a common misconception. It's Walzer, W-A-L-Z-E-R, not Waltz or Walds as many claim. And according to Herman, his brother heard the true story directly from Walzer's lips. The tale begins in 1869, when Walzer, a German immigrant with a keen eye for prospecting, and his partner Jacob Weiser made an extraordinary discovery. They weren't looking for riches. They were simply exploring the Superstition Mountains, camping near a good spring not far from what's now called Weaver's Needle, that sharp, isolated peak that's become synonymous with the legend. Walking through a canyon along a creek bed, they noticed something remarkable. Erosion had exposed a ledge of almost pure gold, about 20 inches wide. This would become known as the placer. Their mining technique was clever and cautious. They excavated on a gradual incline, making the tunnel just 4 inches wider on each side than the gold deposit. It was just wide enough to work in and easy to conceal when they needed to make trips into Phoenix, Florence, or Globe to sell small amounts of ore. But the story doesn't end there. While working the placer one day, they heard an unexpected sound echoing through the canyons, the distinctive crack of breaking rocks. Following the noise, they discovered 2 Spanish miners working what would become known as the quartz mine, about a mile from their claim. These miners revealed a stunning secret. There were 8 Spanish mines in the vicinity. But knowledge, as they say, comes at a price. Shortly after this revelation, the Spanish miners were found dead, victims of unknown assailants. Walzer and Weiser buried them where they fell, adding another layer to the mountain's dark history. The partners built an adobe hut near their spring, creating a base for their mining operations. While the structure has long since crumbled, Herman believes its ruins could be the key to finding the lost mines. But here's the thing. They never worked the quartz mine. Its hidden entrance offered no lookout opportunity, making it dangerously vulnerable to surprise attacks. Instead, they carefully concealed its location and stuck to the more defensible placer. Herman himself tried searching for the mines when he first arrived in Arizona, but soon found himself taking a job at the Rievis Ranch, about 25 miles from Walzer's claim. The ranch, originally owned by E.A. Rievis, has its own tragic connection to the area's gold fever. Rievis, who made his living selling vegetables and fruit to local mining communities, was ambushed and murdered on one of his trips to Florence. The ranch changed hands several times after that. Jack Frazier took ownership, with Will Knight as foreman. Later came Mark Twain Clemens, Jim Tex Barkley, Bill Martin, and Hewley Bacon. Herman stayed through all these changes, watching the land's history unfold. From his humble home, Herman can point out Iron Mountain to the north and White Mountain slightly west, where he knows of 2 more Spanish mines. That brings the total to 10 known deposits in the superstitions, though known might be a generous term, as their exact locations remain hidden. But there's something else in these mountains, something darker than just lost gold. Herman, who spent 60 years in this unforgiving landscape, speaks of a curse. Now, he's not typically a superstitious man, but these mountains, they're different. The curse, he believes, dates back to early territorial days when Spanish miners and Native Americans first clashed over the region's mineral wealth. The massacre at Walnut Canyon stands as a bloody testament to these conflicts. What makes Herman's account so compelling is its authenticity. Clayton L. Wurst, a historical field explorer from Fairview, Montana, once told Herman that over 1,000 different stories have been told about the lost Dutchman mine. Most of these tales, as Herman puts it, are stuff and nonsense. But his version aligns perfectly with accounts from other historical sources, including a native of Old Mexico who remained in the territory of Arizona for many years after the Battle of Walnut Canyon. Unlike the wild tales of betrayal and murder that often surround the lost Dutchman legend, Herman paints a different picture of Jacob Walzer. He was a sober man of good character, though he did keep wine in his cellar for visitors. He wasn't greedy. His wants were simple and easily satisfied. He never carried too much gold on any one trip to town, knowing the dangers that such wealth could attract. Today, the Superstition Mountains continue their silent vigil, keeping their secrets despite countless expeditions and searches. Somewhere in those rugged canyons, past the saguaros and cholas, beyond the prickly pear and palo verde, the lost Dutchman mine waits. Maybe it's near that old spring by Weaver's Needle, or perhaps it's hidden in plain sight, masked by decades of erosion and desert growth. As Herman would say to those still searching, I wish them luck, and if wealth can bring them happiness, I hope they can conquer the curse of the superstitions and find the riches which have lain hidden so long. But he offers this warning. Many have gone into these mountains seeking Walzer's gold, and their greed has cost them their lives. Some mysteries, perhaps, are better left unsolved. The lost Dutchman mine stands as more than just a tale of hidden treasure. It's a story of friendship, survival, and the enduring mystery of the American West. In these mountains, fact and legend intertwine like the twisted branches of a desert mesquite, and somewhere, beneath the scorching Arizona sun, Jacob Walzer's gold continues to whisper its siren song to all who dare to listen. This has been Southwest Desert. Until next time, keep exploring. I hope you enjoyed these lost Southwest tales. For more videos and playlists on the Southwest, check out my large catalog. Happy trails.